Okay. I would like to call the regular council meeting March 28th to order. We are honored to gather on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. Welcome to everyone here. Thank you very much for coming out. And first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and we have a late item, and it's 3.3, so would someone like to move that?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes?
Move adoption. Oh.
Yes,
There's a correction.
yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, I have it. Sorry. I forget the number.
I've got it.
Yeah.
So, do I?
I have that written somewhere. Oh,
22-313. Has Councillor Sullivan opposed as well?
Yes. Yeah, I voted in favor of the motion 22313. Correction.
Okay. Would somebody like to move the minutes with that correction?
I will.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, we have delegations. That council received the presentation of Evan Lovelace and Dougal Brown regarding the UROC 2021 report and draft strategic trails plan.
Move receipt.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have a presentation which we're going to go through. I'm going to just say a few brief words and then Dougal will take over. It's been a couple of years since we've met, and I think we're through COVID almost by now. So we just wanted to give you a quick update on where things are at or have been over the last year and a bit, but in particular we wanted to share with you a draft strategic plan for the trail network, which we've been developing over the last year. And we will refer the actual plan with you at a later date, but we wanted to provide some highlights and a bit of a summary of it this evening and give you a chance to ask some questions about it. And we're gathering input from various stakeholders and partner groups at this time, so it's timely. Thanks. See if I get this right. I'm not going to go into this in any detail. If you're interested, you can attend our AGM next week, which will be reviewing our goals from last year and what's coming up for next year. But every year we do go through a strategic planning process and highlight some goals for the year. And in particular, the last one there, which we're going to speak to this evening, is the strategic plan for the trail network, as mentioned. Thank you.
Right, hello everyone, I'm Dougal, and just going to talk to you a little bit about what UROC is 2021-22. We're made up a volunteer board of 9 directors, the executive director myself. There are 3 pretty much full-time employed trail crew and 7 part-time trail crew. That's mainly through the spring and fall seasons and the shoulder seasons. Countless volunteers. There's over 185 trails that we're looking after, and that is a distance of about 190 kilometers over 6,500 acres. And that 6,500 acres is made up mainly of private land, private managed land as a working forest, 85 to 90% of that. And then 10 to 15% of municipal parklands and municipal forest and water supply lands. UROC was supported by 2,083 members last year. We recorded our last true data collection was 167,000 visits to the network. That's in and out, people going in and out. And the appetite for trail use is increasing. And by its own reputation, Cumberland is one of the leading trail networks in North America. Trailforks, it currently exists as the 5th busiest network in North America. So a lot of people are very passionate and very interested in the trail network, and you can see the size of it on that map there. And there's always a lot of conversation through that passion. What we hear on a constant basis. Some of those are highlighted there in the slide in bold, but there's a long list there of the different conversations that we hear all the time. Increased volume, conflict, etiquette, whether there is or there isn't conflict, whether there is a good reach to sustainable or ecological factors. We're always hearing about trees down and problems in the network that we go and fix as the trail crew. Land boundaries, migrations, broken bridges, freeze-thaw, vandalism, dog feces, the list goes on. And quad bikes, dirt bikes, motorized use, and then also the needs and wants of what the trail network is and actually stands as. And that comes along with rogue trail building, need for more green trails. Is it a multi-use network? Does it need more skills? Does it need more climb trails? A lot of conversations about that. The very nature of the network is changing. So we have to look at a strategic approach, and UROC as an organization, we have to embrace a holistic approach, work with partners, facing challenges together, looking for synergies within our work, and using trail design and trail management to reduce conflict and give us better opportunities and a better experience. We want to explore and support initiatives by the Village of Cumberland and other partners on shared boundaries and understand how that network works. We want to support the other community groups who have similar purposes and other interests in the network. And we, as I've mentioned, want to reduce and deflect conflict. These are the things that we've been looking at and studying and trying to work out where we're going from. So the strategic plan was developed, and we're looking for the next 3 to 5 years for that plan to influence us. And we found that information from trail user surveys in recent years. Over 2021, we did a survey and over 500 respondents. And we've got a nice mix of users in the network from that, and we learned a lot. We also have trail counter data, which helps us explore those multi-user groups and how they enjoy using the network. And we took direct feedback from stakeholders. We also understand the network in terms of its architecture and how it was organically evolved, and we can now apply planning to that. We also have in-house an extensive trail building experience, knowledge of planning. We have a serious firepower within the UROC organization, wealth of knowledge, and since that trail access land agreement was established in 2015, we've learned a lot and evolved a lot. So to give you an idea of what the strategic plan looks like, the goal 1 was to maintain and enhance the existing high-quality network of trails. And we would be administering the land access agreement that we've had in place since 2015. It has a lot of factors in there that we work with, and we work with our partners and work with our stakeholders. We share ideas. We want to improve and maintain existing trails, considering all user groups. Of the 190 kilometers that we have, over 185 trails. And if we include the double tracks and the subsidiary roads and all the other factors getting around the network, we're looking at a much larger network. We're going to engage with the trail builders, whom we have 63 active trail builders who are going out there all the time, regularly gaining access. And that is also a makeup of 75 group trail sessions and days that we did in 2021. Over 50 of those were motivated by UROC, and then several others by volunteer groups who are going out to look after the trails that they've built. We're striving for a sustainable trail network. We recognize environmental impacts. We know that the winter hits the network hard. We know that the summer and the spring, and then use, the different user aspects. We understand and we know how those all operate, and we know how to look after that. We're also trying to educate with that. There's water protection and water management, and that's twofold. There's water protection in the terms of the water supply for the Village of Cumberland and for the Comox Valley, and water management of how it moves through the network and how it damages and affects trails. Water is pretty hardcore. And then, of course, it's a working forest, but there's also wildlife and fauna, and there's a consideration there that we want to have sustainable an aspect to our trail network. strategic goal number 2 is to optimize the trail network and create the best possible user experience. And how we want to identify with that is looking at the terrain and how the trails have evolved organically through different builders. There's a distinct pattern that is there, and we want to see it as different zones, cross-country zones, blue square zones, gravity zones, and how those zones interrelate to each other and how the trails within those zones interrelate to each other. We're looking at those, how they move traffic through the network, and they create pinch points, they bring a lot of traffic through entering and exit the network, and we know and we have ways and we have ideas of how to alleviate some of those pinch points and change some of the high traffic in the entering and exit of the trail network by working within those zones and creating those zones with more connectivity, more flow between those zones, and how the traffic gets pushed to certain areas of the network by trail design not connecting to each other, and how some trails don't have a relationship with each other. So some black diamond trails go into blue square trails and go into higher designation trails. So we're working to streamline that and smooth that out, and what that hopes to do is to create a better user experience, but also 2, spread everyone out and put the right people who are wanting to use the network in the right places. And that will hopefully alleviate entering and exit the network and take more pressure off some of those high pressure zones. This is gives you an idea of, I learned from the last meeting that we had that you enjoyed this slide, and this is the latest 2022's latest heat map. The thick red lines are the very dense use trails and points, and you can see how Cumberland is, the village of Cumberland itself is the main feeder to the whole network. But if you look through that central, slightly down to the left part around Allen Lake, you can see that it's very, very thick red lines. And this shows you how connectivity of zones and how flow between zones and how movement across the network is concentrated in certain areas. And if we look at how we can spread that out and how we can change the connectivity of those zones, we may be able to reduce some of that heat and make that a little bit less pressure on the village of Cumberland itself. So we're working with the village of Cumberland on how we make that better. This capacity of people that are in the network has obviously brought different interests and different ideas of perhaps some conflict. So we want to adopt more informative trail designations, and we worked with the village of Cumberland to identify some new designations for trails, which we will leak that out into the network and use those designations to streamline the trails. We want to communicate trail etiquette and code of conduct with that, using that, and hopefully that'll reduce the conflict. We can do that through trail design, and the 2 photographs are examples of how we did that. Pointer. That there used to be a trail, and we took that out, that connection. This is Big Log, and this is Orange Peels. Orange Peels is a black diamond, pretty much mountain biking trail, and Big Log is more of a nature kind of walking kind of trail, and the 2 used to be joined, and that was a problem. It was creating a lot of conflict. So working with the village of Cumberland, we were able to decommission a section of trail and turn it back to forest and separate the 2 trails and create a better experience for those people who want to use the trails for different purposes. Then the other slide is Tide Knot. And Tide Knot used to have a mountain bike line that goes to go in between these 2 trees. We decommissioned it. You can see it's gone back to natural forest, and we changed the trail to more of a nature-orientated experience. So mountain bikes, it's a bit of a problem for them to go zapping around that corner there. But as a walking experience, it's a much nicer experience. So through trail design and through considering the different purposes of the trails and how the trails perform within the zones, we can alleviate conflict. those are the core ideas of our strategic plan for the next few years, and working together with our shared interests will, as we say, hopefully create a better user experience for all user groups, which will benefit everybody. Supporting and sharing the projects helps create positive outcomes creates more opportunities as well. The trail network is a legacy feature. It's taken many years to evolve. It's a huge network, and it's a community asset. And we want to provide, from Europe, we want to provide assurance that we're going to look after that. We're going to deliver the best network we can. We're going to face these challenges and do a good job. Collaborating on these projects for youth as well. We want to create enjoyment and instill the great outdoors as an opportunity for youth. Getting out there gives us a healthy community. It's a great asset, active lifestyle. We want to look after that. Some more examples of our trail design and an adaptive factor as well, which I just want to point in that we've been working quite hard recently to adapt some of the existing trails for adaptive use, and these are some of the examples. So we're being inclusive and diversifying the zones. Thank you.
Are you open to questions?
Sure.
Okay. Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks Dougal, thanks Evan, thanks UROC. You guys do a lot of great work with limited resources, so we're very thankful for you guys. I just got a couple questions. You mentioned just the entry spots and stuff. Just curious what UROC's plan. I know you're talking about the strategic planning, which I really like your strategic planning. I think that's exactly where we'd like to see this go to. Just about entry spots and exit spots. Do you have any kind of ideas moving forward about creating some new ones, or what's up with the future of the entry spots? Because I know Sutton Road is becoming an issue, and I mean that parking lot might not exist forever as well. So just moving forward, we're just going to have to figure out some spots. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas on that.
Yeah, I think you're almost answering your own question. It's really going to be dependent on what happens evolving with frontage and entry and parking and all of that. We certainly have ideas, as Dougal was alluding to, of where use can be dispersed, including down towards the lake, some ways perhaps even, or even to the east perhaps. But we certainly recognize the issue and the pressure points at the existing trailheads, and I think we all know that it needs to be addressed. So yeah, we'll be looking forward to working with Kevin in the village to try and sort those out.
Okay. You guys mentioned sustainability, and I'm just curious about UROC's strategic plans with just the end game of trails. Like, just where is the future really headed with that idea of what the future plans are for the trails? Are we just going to endlessly expand, or just where are we headed with that? Like,
We're not. We're not going to endlessly expand. That's not an intention. There's a lot of trails out there that need a lot of work done to them. One, sustainably, to keep them living and keep them thriving. A trail goes through a certain life, and we want to try and improve that. And then the second factor to sustainability is that we're not going to build more trails for the sake of building trails. We've got a direction on if we have an existing trail and there is existing terrain that could be used for that trail to be extended and finished, so to speak, to create better flow, connectivity, and for trails to speak to each other, then we would pursue that, and we would try and get our volunteer builders who want to build more trails to jump onto that idea. But we're creating this zone aspect so that we can look at each zone as a package, and if it's got all its boxes checked, then we're not going to do more in that zone. Also, the majority of the network is, as I mentioned, is owned by private landowners, and there are certain density issues as well from their part. So we will not be doing any trail development in some of those zones, and there are other zones that are not dense at all, and we possibly can do trail development in there, but it'll be very strategic, and it will be on a utility trail or a requirement trail, or a climbing trail, or a connection trail, or a utility trail I've already mentioned. So that's the aim, yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Just moving forward, just want to make sure we protect like sensitive areas. I mean, the plan, like there's so much growth in the community, and we're bringing so many numbers. So I just really am concerned with overuse. I'm concerned with the multi-use for everyone. I like seeing the conflicts reduction strategies and stuff that you guys are mentioning, and I just hope moving forward that that increases. Yeah. And just when's the date of the AGM? Next week?
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
I just want to mention something against your point about lots of use of trails. If a trail is built well and it's built drains well and it's actually performs well, it'll last forever. It doesn't get washed away or damaged. And we're trying to do that. We're trying to build these trails to that point that they will sustain more use. And I know that there's multi-use, different ways of trail eroding through multi-use, but with good trail design and with good trail effort, they can sustain that.
Thank you. Councillor Sproul, is your mic on?
Yes, I'm going to keep it on.
Pull it closer to you.
Yeah. Thanks for all the information, guys. I don't know what to say since I spend every day out somewhere, either where I live down towards the lake or in this middle section I was exploring yesterday. Oh, I only just got into Tide Knot and Orange Peel, but there's so much to say about the way the trails are. And so far, I haven't seen a lot of conflict. I hear about it, but I know not to go on a Saturday morning to certain downhill trails because there might be people going super fast down there. So I don't see an end to this trail system because I'm helping with the Vancouver Island Spine Trail people. That's the trail proposed, the hiking trail, all the way from about Horn Lake. Well, it's supposed to be from Victoria, all the way through to Cumberland and then up to Forbidden Plateau, and then through Strathcona Park. So this part here is the connector for the Beauforts to the other chain of mountains. So anyway, I'm absolutely thrilled at all this going on, and I don't find it overcrowded yet. And I find the trails well managed. Trees tend to be chopped up. The fallen trees are dealt with straight away. So thank you so much.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Congratulations, 2,083 members and 63 trail builders, so well done. I think I certainly wouldn't want to be you trying to manage all that and all the, just the boom in the last couple of years in mountain biking everywhere. So I very much appreciate your work, and I very much appreciate the strategic planning. I think you hit all the concerns that I've heard and experienced. And I very much appreciate the work that you did, particularly this year. The trails were there were so many trees down and so many issues this year with that snow that never went away. So thank you for that, and also for getting Tide Knot up and out of the water, which is lovely. I appreciate the work you're doing, and I look forward to seeing the plan come together. I like the approach of trying for efficiency. I think you can try and spread out the entrances, but when the majority of people are coming from town, they're not gonna go around. They're gonna go through Sutton, and that's the easiest access. So I think just signage and slow down or be careful or whatever we can do there would be helpful in partnership with you guys. And looking forward to see the plan. Oh, and adaptive trails. As you know, we have an accessibility committee here who is really keen on adaptive trails. So if you are able to share that information via Kevin or yourselves to the accessibility committee, I think they'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Kettler?
Thanks. And yeah, I'll just also extend my thanks. I think that trail management is very difficult, and you had a good list of the things that you have to contend with there on a daily basis. So yeah, we appreciate that work that you're doing, and you are doing a good job. The initial slide where it talks about 85% of the trails being in private managed forest land and only 10 to 15 in the village kind of gives you a skew that we're just a very small part. But then when you look at the heat signature, that's really all going through our 10 to 15%. So there, I think there is reason for us to have more dialogue, and so that when you guys are doing your strategic planning and when we're doing ours, when we're talking about village lands and what we're going to do with them in the future, that we need to be talking to you guys about how we would reroute people or other access points, all those things. So I think there probably could be a lot more dialogue happening, although we really appreciate you coming in and presenting today. We don't really get to hear so much what happens between your directors and our staff as far as your strategic plan. So I think it'd be nice if you guys were able to come to council with some of that dialogue around strategic planning, so that we could help inform you about ours and you could reciprocate. So yeah, that would be great. I also wanted to ask about climate change and some of the atmospheric rivers that we experienced recently, and how you guys are looking at dealing with that from a trail management perspective. If you are thinking that there might be more closures in the future when we have these really extreme events, or yeah, just what your plan is for climate change and trail management.
Yeah, the heat dome was a big knock this year, and that dried everything out. And then we got significant snow in the winter, and that made a lot of trees fall down. And Councillor Brown, you mentioned that there was a lot of trees in the village. Well, there's still a lot of snow up the top there, and there's still 150, 200 trees to deal with up the top. Climate change is a conversation that we've had briefly, and we're noticing changes in the network. And I guess to respond to your question, we haven't put a full plan together, but we are responding to these issues last year and the year before, since I've been employed with UROC. And there may well be closures, and there may well be reasons to close off areas and identify with those problems. During the summer months when it's very dry, we have meetings often with the forestry companies and with the Village of Cumberland about fire closures. So those closures may be spread across the winter months, they may be spread across the summer months. Yeah, we're very aware of the change in the climate, and I guess we're sort of developing a thought and a plan as we go, because we're not really sure what's happening tomorrow, but we've definitely seen what happened yesterday. So, yeah.
Thanks. Maybe that can be part of our future strategic planning sessions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight and present all the information, especially the stats. It's nice to see it and see the changes that you are making. And I just have two questions. I want to know, is having e-bikes on the trail making a difference?
They're actually, the rules right now is the e-bikes are not allowed on the trails. They were considered motorized. There's a certain classification of the mountain bike that's out there. There's an e-bike is now considered a non-motorized because it's pedal assist. And quite honestly, no. The answer is no. They're not making an awful lot of difference. Where that situation will need to be managed is e-bikes make different areas and distance more accessible. Mm-hmm. So we will need to manage the way that the user uses an e-bike. But in terms of, do you do kgs or pounds here? It's I'm a 77 kg person on a 40-pound bike is no different to a 200-pound person on a 40-pound bike. So if you weigh up the averages, the weight of that movement doesn't do much damage to the trail.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And do you have, you used to have a lot of issues with rogue trail building. Have you brought that in?
That's been reeled in quite significantly, and I don't know if we'll ever get rid of it, but we have decommissioned several trails in village lands and several trails in the forest lands from rogue building, and we've created a relationship with those people who were rogue building. And on one hand, it's a little unfair to call it rogue building, because back in the day it wasn't. People just did that. And now that it's a sanctioned network, it's now called rogue building, and it kind of puts a dark cloud over the whole thing. But those people who were building trails in the past now understand the process, and they are part of that process, and they are working on sanctioned trails. And we've made it as easy and as facilitated as possible for those people who want to build trails to build trails. And touching on Councillor Sullivan's point earlier about connecting with those people, we've got that going on. So
Well,
things are good. Things are good.
Congratulations on that. That was a big issue in the beginning, and glad you've found a solution to it. The other thing that I would like to comment is I would like to thank you very much when I phoned and asked if you would take the leadership class up at and do a trail building with them. Thank you very much for taking that on. I'm sure the students will love to be out in the fresh air doing a good job and working on something that's very important to the community. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Just have a quick one. Last time you guys were here, what was the membership number out then, if you can remember? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
721.
Wow.
Okay. I just have one final question. Last time you presented, it was at the Culture Center, the Committee of the Whole, and you talked about a training area?
Skills area?
Yes, a skills area. Is that one, are you pursuing that, or is that on hold?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to call it a skills area. But there is an area in the network that we've built a variety of trails in a small area that gives you a hot lap or a quick run or a nice walk of variety. And we've built those, and they're called 2-pack, 4-pack, 6-pack. They're like progression trails. So the answer to your question is yes, that is very much been built. There's a trail called After School Special, and it has a massive conflict of direction on it. We've put in a new trail next to it, which is, as we speak, it's nearly finished. That's going to take away that direction. It gives a flow around that little area. Yes, the variety area is in place. It's built.
No park.
We're close. It's not a bike park at all. That area is a reflection of all the trails in the greater network in one little area.
Oh, wow.
It's really for the kids. That is really the aim. It's somewhere that they can get to, because it's so difficult for the kids to get into the trail network at large, because there's a hill.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the closest place that we could do it.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I look forward to attending your AGM.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, that council received the delegation of some concerned mums of Cumberland regarding moving towards a climate change action plan for Cumberland.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Would you introduce yourself when you come up, please?
Hi, thank you for having us this evening. My name is Katie. We are all residents of Cumberland.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm Lindsay. Erica. I'm Genevieve.
So we came together really recently through our shared knowledge and concern of climate change. And we know we're not alone in this. Many other people in our village are very worried about the future. We're here today because we have a dream that one day journalists will come to Cumberland to write articles, not just about how we became a lifestyle hotspot, but also about how this legendary coal mining town built itself a new legacy as a net carbon zero community by closing the carbon loop and building a resilient and equitable future.
All right, so yeah, the work towards that dream, I think, has already started. Over a decade ago, Cumberland joined the BC Climate Action Charter. In 2013, we had a corporate climate action plan, and since 2016, we've been recognized as a climate action community thanks to all your efforts to reduce and offset corporate greenhouse gas emissions. So on behalf of our group, we want to say thank you. I know there's a lot of work already in progress, and that has been done. We want to acknowledge that. And that's not all. Village Mayor and Council, I see you have clearly signaled through your policy and your initiatives that you support mitigation and adaptation efforts, we've listed them here, to combat climate change. We know this is not an exhaustive list, and much work has already been done. In 2014, the village made a clear commitment to taking on a leadership role for the region with your 2014 OCP. It provided a path forward in setting municipal strategy. Your commitments included a 1/3 reduction per capita in emissions and a community-wide climate change action plan. So as a result of this, climate change has appeared as a top village strategic priority in all the lists, and it's remained on your strategic radar ever since. So how are we doing? Well, that brings us to why we're here today. We want to take a look at how we've been doing and how we can move forward.
So this slide is from the OCP from 2014 and from the implementation section. So it shows the creation of a community energy and emissions plan as the top priority. But as far as we know, that hasn't happened yet or started yet. And Ben and Lister brought the Green New Deal to Council in 2021, and a motion was passed that village staff would create a report outlining how to move it forward, but that hasn't started yet either. And then this one is from the village's strategic plan, and you can see community climate change assessment as a top priority. However, in the 2022 budget, there was no funding attached to doing this. We don't want to negate all the hard work that we know and everything that is happening in a lot of areas, but we think it's really important to also be honest about where we're at right now. And we're really happy to see that these priorities were in all these documents, and it's there as a priority. And we had a lot of discussions about why these priorities haven't moved forward. The conclusion that we came to is that it's likely just that staffing and resources are stretched really thin. There's many priorities, and that there's no dedicated climate change staff to champion this work, especially at budget time. So that's why funding for a staff person is a really key part of what we're asking for today.
Right. So I decided to make a few graphs just to see how we were doing. Oh, this isn't me, this is Katie, sorry. Wait on the graphs, they're coming soon.
So despite not having a comprehensive climate plan, it's good to see the village is still using a climate change lens on individual projects and plans, as we mentioned earlier. But without an assessment of where we're at in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and what our climate risks are in the village, and a clear understanding of what our goals are with tracking ongoing, it's really hard to know how we're doing. Adaptation is really important. We know the world is already 1.1 degrees warmer, and we're going to be running into more frequent extreme weather events, which we're already seeing that. No amount of adaptation is going to help unless we also stop putting greenhouse gases into the air. The municipality plays a critical role in this through zoning, bylaws, and incentives, just for example. So now we get to the graphs. Let's take a look at our emissions.
Okay, so as we said, mitigation, getting greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere is really important. So these are the Corporation of the Village of Cumberland emissions. There are question marks for 2020 and 2021 because as far as we were able to get information,
emissions were not tracked for the last 2 years. This is despite the fact that tracking emissions and buying carbon offsets is a part of our commitment in the Climate Action Charter. However, you can see that even with buying carbon offsets, emissions are still going up over time. So carbon offsets were a useful tool. However, the scientific consensus is really clear. We need to transition away from fossil fuels, and we need to stop putting greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We need to get onto the dotted green line. Let me use my pointer right here. Again, scientific consensus, we need to cut our emissions in half by 2030 and down to net zero by 2050 if we want to limit warming to 1.5 or 2 degrees. And let's be clear, the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees is actually quite horrific. Okay, these are community emissions, so emissions related to all of us in the Village of Cumberland. And if we add the last graph onto this graph, you can see that black line there. So that is the Corporation of the Village of Cumberland emissions in relation to the community. And that's why you can see it's almost negligible. So that's why we're asking for a community-wide strategy, because those emissions are just so much greater. And because the municipality has the tools that we need to impact those community emissions. So this data set is not perfect. It's really hard to find a good data set for Cumberland, which is problematic in itself. It's hard to know how we're doing and if we're meeting our targets. This data set does not include transportation emissions, landfill emissions, emissions related to building new roads and the new development. It's basically like heating our homes, heating our water, and electricity emissions. And it's really interesting what came up, right? If you look at this, the orange rectangles on the bottom of all of these bars, that's emissions related to natural gas. So that's just gas heating our homes and heating our water. And we're still putting in new homes right now, the vast majority with natural gas. Vancouver realized that 60% of their emissions came from natural gas heating homes. And they put in a bylaw to phase out natural gas heating in new homes. So that's something we could do that would have a massive impact. In contrast, you can see BC Hydro electricity use is that top dark blue rectangle. And you can see that even though our electricity use has increased over time, emissions associated with that electricity have decreased, because BC Hydro, our electricity is a lot cleaner than it used to be. Our electricity is 93% clean right now. So how are we doing? We only have data to 2018. So the 2020 bar there is just a target. In the Comox Valley Sustainability Strategy, that was the target. Based on our graph and the trend of our graph, I would say we did not meet that target if we were trying to. Our OCP had us at a target of a 33% per capita emissions relative to 2007 for 2020. Again, we don't have that data. I did do the math. We did pretty well because our population did increase. We had a reduction in per capita emissions, around 25%. I'd say about half of that would be related to BC Hydro getting cleaner. Again, you can see in the last two targets here, we need to reduce our emissions in half by 2030 and down to net zero for 2050 if we want to limit warming to 1.5 or 2 degrees. These are ambitious targets. In fact, they are massive. They are unprecedented in the scale of change we would need to make in a very short period of time. If we threw everything at this, we probably still wouldn't hit these targets. But I believe we have a moral imperative to act as fast as we can. Every year matters, every bit of warming matters, and every choice matters.
Are you ladies open to questions?
We're not done.
Oh, okay.
We're not done. While we trust that you know the science, we want to once again emphasize the urgency of the situation. This is a quote from the co-chair of the most recent IPCC report. The scientific evidence is unequivocal. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and the health of the planet, and any further delay will miss a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future. But so far, every conversation that we've had about moving forward has been met with the same response. We don't have the time and we don't have the money, which we get. If we had someone to look for and apply for grants, we could have money to take action, but we don't have the money to pay that person, so here we are. Despite this conundrum, what we are asking for is both a person and a plan. In reality, a person who can make and implement a plan. We fully acknowledge that both of those things cost money, but the true cost of running a community needs to include climate change mitigation and adaptation. It's just a reality of where we're at. It's just another thing that we need to start taking into consideration. And if we don't put in the time and money in now, our children and grandchildren will have a far bigger bill to pay. So we are asking you to make a resolution to allocate money in the 2023 budget to hire a dedicated staff person to manage this important issue with the end goal of creating a community climate action strategy specific to Cumberland. That will give us time to explore the many funding options that are already available to minimize the cost to the village. The good news, because there is some, is that small communities in BC are already doing the work. So in Rossland, with a population of about 3,700, they appointed a sustainability commission composed of 7 community members and 2 councillors to guide their strategic sustainability plan, which includes specific goals and strategic actions. And climate change, mitigation, and adaptation are a major focus of their work. Hope recently created an integrated OCP, which is a combined official community plan with a community sustainability plan, which is a promising option given that Cumberland needs to update our OCP soon. So there might be a way to put those together. And just Hope, I said that was Hope, it has a population of about 6,200 people, so a bit bigger, but somewhat similar. And then just last week, Pemberton, with a population of about 3,200 people, passed their community climate action plan, funded a staff person to oversee it, declared a climate emergency, and joined the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Program. They basically hit it out of the park, and it's super inspiring. There's other small communities that are doing similar work, like Fernie, Smithers, Peachland, Kimberley, Osoyoos, Grand Forks, Chemainus, and Sparwood are also moving forward. And these communities can be a major source of support and advice to Cumberland moving forward. The people who are organizing these things are so excited to talk to other people about it. Everybody that we've reached out to has just said, yes, go for it, here's how. And it's also really nice to see that different communities are doing it in different ways that really fit their needs, and we can do the same thing. And we are also offering to help. We are offering our time and energy as a task force or a commission or whatever structure best meets Cumberland's needs. We have every intention to organize and work together as a community to make this happen and would appreciate a strong voice in local government to assist us. And given that you all acknowledge the realities of climate change and the need to act, Cumberland is well placed to be another small community leading the way towards a more sustainable future. The research is clear, the tools have been developed, and the funding is out there. The next step is a person and a plan. Thank you for your time.
And now are you open to questions? Yes. Questions? We'll start with Councillor Spruill.
I don't know what to say. You've really thought of everything. Yeah, it's inspiring to see that the energy of each of you has now come together into this strong group. I can only say that I know we're not supposed to make comments yet or discuss doing stuff, but I feel that there's going to be a way for us to integrate this, what you're doing. We have the beginnings of all of this, or more than that, but we haven't actually put it right in front so your presentation has done that for me anyway tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. And thank you all, concerned moms. I am also a concerned mom, and I appreciate the tone of your presentation, even though this is quite a serious and scary thing. And I love your coal to carbon zero headline. I think we could really use that. So yeah, I just finished the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Climate Leadership Program. And all those resources that you mentioned are available to communities, especially the Partners for Climate Protection Program, which offers staff support and resources and. And I also like the idea of having a task force or committee. Looks like there's one right there. And also having a staff person in the village to bring everything together and create some forward motion and keep that motion going through wastewater and all the other things that we're doing. So yeah, very well done presentation, and thank you so much for your time and energy in this.
Councillor Kettler?
Yep, also a Cumberland mom, also concerned about climate change, but thank you so much. I thought that was a fantastic presentation, like lots of detail. You did your research, and I commend you for that. I'd like to talk about a few things that you missed, though. We did put through the single item plastic bag regulation, so banning plastic bags and straws, and we were just behind Victoria in the province doing that. So we have led the way on other initiatives like that. We were also one of the first to put in environmental protection areas, which puts an added layer of environmental consideration on development permit areas. So that's a really important way that we are working toward protecting our environment. We're also part of the Mid-Island EV charging station plan that is being spearheaded by Nanaimo, but is rolling out across the Mid-Island. And so we'll be getting some EV charging stations within our community. Of course, all the work that we just heard about through UROC and the community forests that we've been doing, and land conservation is a huge part of what this council's been working on as well for many years. So that has a huge impact, of course, on greenhouse gases because you don't have the broader impacts on it. So just our community and people's greenhouse gas emissions you're talking about, but of course there's the broader land base and what's happening there with private managed forest lands, and not just the removal of trees, but the loss of soil. And soil is a huge carbon sink, and so the loss of that is a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions as well. And I'm sure that would be an off-the-charts thing if we had put that on there. So we've put forward many motions, resolutions with the province, talking about changes with private managed forest lands. We've also put forward many resolutions around provincial energy plans, because we would like to do green energy projects here. We have a dam that needs rebuilding, and one of the things we would have liked to have done is put a turbine as we're upgrading the dam so that we could generate our own hydroelectric power. But again, funding is the issue, and the province isn't funding anything because they've put all their money into Site C. So we're not getting any extra funding from them to do those kind of micro projects. Another thing that we've talked about a lot in council is geothermal energy. We have a sister town in Nova Scotia called Spring Hill, and it's an old coal mining town, and they have done geothermal energy. So they're heating their rec center and a whole bunch of homes, and they've gone down into their coal mines and are using that energy. And so the mayor has talked to their mayor, and we've gotten information about how to do that. But again, it's a resource issue. But if we were to redevelop buildings, municipal buildings and such, that would definitely be something that we would be looking at, and would certainly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, because these are really old buildings that we're in right now, not energy efficient. So that's also something that we would look to in the future. But you did talk about data, and data is super important. We've always tracked our or you had the list from 2010, we've tracked our corporate emissions, and since 2014, we've been carbon neutral. The last 2 years, we haven't because the province pulled that funding. There is no longer a CARET program for us to apply to. So again, it's a resource issue. It's not that we don't want to do these things. And then the broader community data, as you found, it is hard to get accurate data to the point where you can see whether your decisions are making a difference. But that is something that we're looking at the regional district. And we're looking at putting up an actual real-time web page where we have that kind of data on the website that everyone can access. So hopefully that's something that you guys can look at and give us feedback on. I really support the idea of having a committee, a council around climate action, and would love for all you intelligent, caring women to be on there. I also want to encourage you to possibly select somebody to run for council, because we know with recent announcements that there will be an open seat. So I would really encourage you to put somebody forward. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan?
Oh, I don't even. Well, aren't we doing what we can do all over the place? So, well, thank you, Councillor Kettler. I forgot what kind of determination that we have put towards this topic in this council. You guys have brought that to light as well, and I really commend you guys as well. It's obvious the passion you've brought to this, and it's super important for us to stay focused on this. As you said, time is just going away for everybody. Also, I did like the tone as well. I don't know how forward I was looking at this presentation necessarily at first, because we all, like you've seen, we're all doing as much as we can. But yeah, I really think there's going to be a future for us to work with you guys. As you've heard and we've mentioned, the capacity is a massive issue. There's other community groups that are really knocking on our door all the time. But this is a different issue. This is bigger than that, I think. So I'm really hoping that we can find, I'm sure that we can find some ways to bridge these gaps and help you guys out with the liaison. And the committee I absolutely support, but understanding that the committees that the village have also take staff time as well, and is draining on our resources in that way as well. And so yeah, we just have to be really mindful of all that stuff, but I'd like to see something moving forward with you guys. And I'm thankful you're here. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very well done. There was one program that wasn't mentioned, is that we signed on to the Blue Community, and that was quite a few years ago, but it had to do with our water. And what they wanted to make sure was that we didn't put it in private hands, our water system. And we signed on to that. We were one of the first internationally to do that. And they were very appreciative at the time, and it went out there that we had done that. I went to Victoria to see the young boy that had started it, and he won an award for putting this forward and getting everybody that the cities that signed on were amazing. So yeah, something we're very proud of. But I would like to say that I echo all of the rest of council's comments. I'm sure that you have a lot of fun at your meetings with a lot of discussion, and I want to thank you very much for your presentation and look forward to working with you further. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next, we have our late item that council received the correspondence from the City of Courtenay Strengthening Community Service Grant Funding. Councillor Kettler, you've been involved with this, and if you'd like to speak to it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, so this is a late item because Courtenay Council just spoke on this earlier today, so got this to us hot off the presses. We want to get it through as soon as we can because we think it will help us with the reopening of the warming center. So it's basically a transfer of the administration of the Strengthening Communities Grant, which is currently held by the regional district, to the city of Courtenay. And there's a list of things there that is included in the application regarding temporary increased shelter capacity, the Connect Center hours increases, expanding community outreach, peer outreach, public engagement, and increasing frontline worker capacity.
Okay. What is your pleasure, Council? They're asking for us to support this because it has to come to us because we are part of the funders for this program.
I'm in support.
Do you want me to move it?
Yes.
That the Village of Cumberland provide its support to the City of Courtenay as primary applicant to apply for, receive, and manage the UBCM Strengthening Community Services Grant funding previously awarded to the Comox Valley Regional District in 2021 in the amount of $1.093 million on behalf of the Village of Cumberland.
Seconder, Councillor Sullivan. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. No unfinished business. Correspondence. That Council received the correspondence from Nicole Brassard, Global Public Affairs Reducing Patio Application Red Tape for BC's Hospitality Sector and Economic Recovery.
Move receipt.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Carried. And in her letter, she's pointing out 8 key recommendations. And so I'd like to ask Kaylin, our Economic Development Officer, to come forward and talk about the 8 bullets and what we're already providing, okay? And if we need to reaffirm.
Reaffirm? Thank you, Your Worship, Council. Nice to see you again. I think I'd preface this with saying that although this movement is a good one, it references the challenges largely felt in larger communities than ours. And I would say that we have very little red tape when it comes to our patio sessions. The biggest challenges, of course, for some businesses is their liquor licensing, which we know is a provincial requirement. But for us, it's a simple application, which comes to me. They provide drawings and such. Most of our businesses, as you've known, have done this for years. Council helped expedite this process when they hired an engineering. They provided direction to hire an engineering tech. So now Joel's able to go out and inspect these things as a purpose. And so beyond that, we've done other things. Council's redirected restart funding to help with that permitting administrative costs. So we've kind of removed some of that red tape. But as part of the application process and with us, it's quite streamlined already as it is. It really just takes about a week for us to receive an application, look at things, and provide that comment back to. And also, last year we had 5 patios.
I was curious the impotence of this in the first place. I didn't know are there issues with
The urban centers are having challenges. They see it a lot as a safety issue and a public safety issue. So last year there was an incident in one of the big American cities where a car crashed into a street side patio. And so the city of Vancouver took a process in Victoria, where they looked back at their processes to make sure that they weren't doing anything that got themselves or the public any concern. So, but for ours, it's minimal, both the number of applications we have and the businesses that utilize them.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone have any questions? Yes, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thanks, Kaylin. I'm sure our process is good. Part of the reason I asked for this to come forward is so that we could forward it to or refer it to the business association, and they can speak to their hospitality folks and see, not necessarily, it may not be the process, but maybe they would like to extend the season or maybe we don't need to bring in the big cement, whatever those things are again this year. I just thought it would be useful to connect with them since we have them now, and they might have some good feedback for us.
Thank you, Councillor, and I agree. And we do have ongoing conversations with them about what patios may look like in the future, or do we want to do things like small side street closures and create parklets where we have common areas where that takes place, so we're taking it off the main street right now, and those conversations are ongoing, but it requires a bit of work once we have commitment from them, we have an understanding what we do to go through and update bylaws and that type of stuff. So we're happy to start those conversations, but well, you know, it's part of the CBA too, and making sure that they're at a place where they can start to make those commitments as well. So
Yeah, and the season is imminent, right? When do we allow them?
oh, they're already out there.
They're out.
They're out. And
There you
so,
go.
and this is part of the ease of the red tape as well, is that the way that a lot of these are built, they pull them in and out every year, and it doesn't require a lot. Joel goes down and inspects them, makes some comments around public safety if they're needed based on our bylaw, but it doesn't require a bunch of extra administrative effort on their behalf every year. I can show you the applications for the Waverley. It's the same every year.
Yeah. It's probably
Yeah.
a copy.
And I know one that has enjoyed it so much that they want to make it permanent now. And they have the land to make it permanent.
Yeah.
And they will be coming in to ask.
And we do try to find some flexibility. Right now, Loves is looking at it. They've got some space crunches with theirs. Theirs is a driveway where they actually can't block. So could they use a street side patio, with the question I got, and put their bike rack there? And so talking to Joel to see how we can do that safely to make sure it can fit within our bylaws. Yeah, we'll look at ideas and options for them to make that work as well. So,
Yeah, and I think the new commercial on the opposite side of the street, like Laneway Coffee, might be looking for something, and yeah, so that's great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, you have an issue with the concrete, Councillor Brown?
No. Oh, I just didn't, I mean, I didn't think it was necessarily an aesthetically pleasing look, that's all.
I would agree with that. but
Yeah.
I definitely think those went in for a reason.
I think that's when it prevents cars from accidentally backing into these things.
Smashy.
We can get to work on our art policy. Maybe someone can paint them.
Because we did have several years without them, and nobody drove into the patios.
Yeah, and again,
So-
last year there was an instance where that happened, and some municipalities sent out a legal alert saying, make sure
Right.
you're covering
Something
yourself.
happened, and then they had to put those red reflectors up for, little things happen, I think, but I think something major.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the discussion. Next, recommendation that council receive the correspondence from UBCM regarding provincial response to 2021 resolutions.
Move seat.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. As you can see, we submitted 3 resolutions, and they all came back. Very interesting dialogue on some of them. And so if there's any comments or what you'd like to do, the one is the NR 29 Clean and Renewable Energy Regulation Framework. And that was concerned Ministry of Mines, Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon Innovation. And that was, did have a meeting with the ministry, and Hydro was there, and they didn't really support us. When he said that they had a surplus, I asked if they were going to lower the price, and they said no. They're talking about the IRP in the Integrated Resource Plan for BC, and they say that we should contact them and submit. I went online, and it was finalized. And, yeah, so I don't know why they're asking us to contact them. The deadline was March 22nd, but they're really not open to start the conversations at this point. The next one was the drinking water protection and private managed forest land. And once again, it's up to us to have a memorandum of understanding with the forest companies. And I think we have a very good relationship with the forest companies, but we are limited. The forest company always seems to have the final say in logging and in our drinking water. But the one thing that I did learn at the last meeting with our MLA, Josie Osborne, is under her new ministry, she is responsible for drinking water and private managed forest lands. So that I think that's very good for our benefit. And I'm sure we will be having discussions with her.
Yeah, I think that's, just a bit of a download on us when they're saying you should have a MOU with the forestry companies. We do, but it doesn't help us if we don't have any actual legal right, or they don't have any legal duty to consult. So if we don't want them, say, logging right above Allen Lake, we don't have that option. Another example is Union Bay, where we specifically asked the forest company not to log beside Langley Lake, which is Union Bay's water source, and they plainly said no. So I think that's still a problem. I think that private managed forest land is pretty much completely deregulated at this point. And so there certainly needs to be change on the province's part to change Private Managed Forest Lands Act and at least bring it up to where the Forest and Range Act is. So that's the Crown land, what governs Crown land. And that act is actually being reviewed, and further restrictions are being put on forestry companies for Crown land, yet we still have private managed forest lands basically deregulated. So there's a lot of work to do there, and I think we need to continue to put pressure on them and continue to put resolutions in, even though they come back and tell us to have an MOU with the forestry companies.
Seems like they're asking us to do their job.
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
Thanks.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's inappropriate for them to actually say in their response to us, communities may opt to purchase land for the protection of their domestic water source. Where do they think we're going to get that money? And downloading that further from the municipality to a nonprofit who then is fundraising from the community, I think is also a bit of a, don't want to say cop-out, because but that's what it feels like.
It reads like that.
It reads like that.
Yeah, it does.
So I appreciate that the province is saying that they are going to review the private managed forest land after they get through the Crown land, but good God, how knows how long that will take. And we just don't have like we heard from our last delegation, we don't have the time to wait on this kind of thing. So disappointing, to say the least.
Yes. Well, it just leads me to, for UBCM, that we set up meetings again this year and go talk to them.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, that's what you have to do to be heard.
Well, now we just go see Minister Osborne, one
Yes.
of our close friends, and she'll tell us the same thing.
Hopefully
I just hope
not.
that Minister Osborne is going to be the new voice that we need to change some of that stuff. And I don't know who better, so if not this, then good luck, society. Anyhow, that's what I got to say.
I think the private managed forest land realize that there's going to be changes. They can't keep doing what they've been doing.
That's why they're logging so fast.
Okay, our next one was the farmers markets and essential service during local emergencies. And the response was decent.
It was, and it requires some follow-up,
Yes.
which I think the Food Policy Council is following up, as well as the BC Association of Farmers Markets, to continue that conversation with UBCM about because it's about farmers markets, but it's also about food security being incorporated into emergency operations planning for all states of emergency. And so that's the message that we're trying to get, that is an important piece of emergency planning. There are, in all local emergency situations, well, we saw with the flood in the farm, there are animals that are stuck there, there are people that are stuck there, and then there is a whole lot of food waste that's happening in this time as well. So I'm happy they've responded, and we'll just keep talking to them.
Yes. Okay. No other comments, then we'll move along. That council, under reports, that council received the March 18, 2022 report, Vacation Rental Regulations, Public Engagement Summary, and Analyst Report.
Move receipt.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Well, the agenda didn't look that full, but lots of important issues for sure, and I think this is one of them. So I'm just going to briefly talk about, don't want to take too much of your time, but what the issue is, the engagement process that we went through, the engagement summary report and analysis, and then the analysis of regulatory options, in particular the ones that we're recommending with this report. So what's the issue? Well, first of all, vacation rentals are increasing across BC, and also in Cumberland is no exception of that. We had, as part of the Housing Needs Report in 2020, ARD&A, a separate company, surveyed or measured how many vacation rental listings there were, and they found there was between 2016 and 2019, and they found that of particular concern is the rental of entire year-round commercially rented units of the entire homes, and that increased from 0 to 38, and that's end of 2019 data, so we don't have more recent data. At the same time, our vacancy rate for rental housing has decreased, and that we have more current statistics on that one. As of last October, it was 1.1% vacancy rate. So we know the growth in vacation rentals may be taking away some of the rental housing. We don't know how many, but it is a concern, and jurisdictions across the province are seeking to find a balance between the need for tourist accommodation but also long-term rental housing. The Housing Needs Report identified that vacation rentals at the time, the entire unit that are rented out commercially year-round, not the ones that are rented occasionally by residents when they go on vacation or single rooms, was 2% of the total housing supply and 9% of the rental housing supply. So that was end of 2019. With this process to review our vacation rental regulations in the zoning bylaw, the engagement included a survey which was open mid-January to early February, a workshop with online workshops, and the survey drew 658 responses, which is a really great response rate. The workshop we had 21 participants from a variety of different sectors, and really good discussions in that workshop. The recommendation of this report is, as part of this engagement process, to also consult with committees and get committees discussing some of these, the regulatory options in particular. The survey asked some demographic questions, perspectives on vacation rentals, and then also the regulatory options. The summary report that's attached to the staff report summarizes the survey results, particularly the perspectives, also the workshop discussions, and the many comments that we received on the open-ended questions. People really felt compelled to provide comments. And then the analysis of the regulatory options looks at the level of public support for different options, but at the same time also put that through the lens of the village's ability to enforce some of the regulations, some of the different types of regulatory options. Some would be difficult to enforce, so we are of course concerned about that. And then also the potential of the regulatory option to protect the long-term rental housing supply, i.e. does it really make a difference or not? So I'll just quickly go through maybe the main ones. You are familiar with our current vacation rental regulations, but just for the benefit of the audience, so they are currently permitted only in the R1A residential infill zone, and then the RE1, our recreation and tourism zone, which is really by Comox Lake. They are permitted any housing type, single-family homes, secondary suites, or the accessory dwelling units, or common language, more coach houses or laneway houses. And there's no restrictions right now on the number or the of bedrooms or number of guests, and we don't have a principal residency requirement, or sometimes referred to as a caretaker requirement. So we checked into these different regulatory options with the public, and the main one that staff is recommending, I summarized them, I just listed them all on page 3 of the report, from 1 to 10. So the main one that we are suggesting or recommending to adopt is requiring a business license to be listed on all advertisements of vacation rental properties. This will help greatly with enforcement So if if the business license number is not listed, that is a cue that potentially it could have been forgotten, or maybe that business doesn't have a license, and that would help with any enforcement. So that's the main recommendation. And then the second one is that would represent a change to our existing regulations, is a principal residency requirement or caretaker requirement to live on the property with a vacation rental. So the effect of this would be that the people could still rent a room in their house, and some vacation rentals is just a room in their house because they live on the property, so that the principal residency requirement would be met. Or they could still rent out their place while they're away because they're still a principal resident. But then entire unit vacation rentals are only possible on properties that also have a secondary suite or an accessory dwelling unit, because you still have to live there on the property. So one of the units, if there's all three on a property, secondary suite, main dwelling, and an accessory dwelling unit, one would have to be occupied by a principal residency. And that could be a long-term tenant or the owner. So principal residency is just that, principal residency. So that's the main recommendation. Some of the other regulatory options, staff believe that parking requirements, 1 space per bedroom, is generally reasonable. It does add up when there's a lot of vacation rentals on a property, and whether that still makes sense. Some jurisdictions, like actually at 3 bedrooms, then there's no additional parking required or a lesser requirement. So we are going to look into that a little bit further and discuss that if this is referred to the committee. Currently, we don't have a limit on the number of bedrooms that can be rented or the number of guests. Just as an example, Tofino does do that. We looked into other jurisdictions as well. And by the way, the presentation that was at the workshop is at the back of the long staff report, which does summarize the 3 jurisdictions that we looked at in particular: Tofino, Pearl River, and Squamish. So yeah, some jurisdictions do have a maximum, say of 6 guests or a maximum of 3 bedrooms. So we do want to dive into that just a little bit further. The type of dwellings where vacation rent should be permitted. So the survey respondents, and also at the workshop, everyone said that, what does it really matter where they live? Like, which one is the principal residency? In a way, if there's just one person living on site and they want to live in the suite and rent the other 2 units, if they have an accessory dwelling unit and also principal residence, a main house, why not? Does it matter? It does provide more options for what type of vacation rentals might be out there and offered to tourists, and provides more variety. So at this point, we're not recommending that the type of dwelling unit is restricted to a particular type. There is Squamish put a cap on the total number of vacation rentals permitted, and they regulate this through a temporary use permit requirement, which is a little bit onerous. It's a tool, and at this point, staff is not recommending that tool, because if other options are pursued, such as a principal residency requirement, that might not be necessary. So same with a cap on the number of vacation rentals per block. Right now, staff's not recommending that. If a principal residency requirement is adopted, then a sign of the vacation rental does appear to be reasonable to staff. It's a business, and having a name out there, just like a B&B, is a reasonable expectation. At the workshop, people were concerned about privacy and vandalism, because sometimes vacation rentals are not rented out, are not occupied, and then people would know that they're empty. But if there's a principal residency requirement, that would not be such a concern out there. Yes, at this point, the zones where vacation rentals should be permitted, the recommendation is to continue to restrict it to the R1A zone only at this time.
Any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you, and the survey was really, really well done, and getting that kind of response. Thank you for that, the work that went into making that so well used.
Yeah, I agree. I was happy to see that there was over 650 respondents. That's that's a good amount for the survey, and lots and lots of comments. That was a big read, going through all those. Everything from don't allow them at all to stay away from my private property. I should be able to do whatever I want. So yeah, there's definitely those extremes there, and I'm sure we can find something in the middle that'll work out. But I don't want to get into the preferences too much, as we there's a recommendation for them to multiple committees.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, I'll just say the same thing. Just looking forward to this going to committee. I'm really happy this has come forward, and it's long overdue, and I'm really happy with it moving forward. So thanks very much.
Yes, I did observe the extremes. It seems one end to the other. Yes, a lot of people just seem to like the status quo. I did look up Airbnb today, and there was 20 within the village right now, just Airbnb, not the other. There's other platforms. As far as helping, I mean, we have to look back to what was it that made us want to do this in the first place. And because we heard there were concerns about parking, housing that doesn't have a caretaker there, that seems to be, for me personally, that's really important in that, yeah, having somebody there to sort out problems. I was kind of disturbed by, I think it was a little bit about Canmore and how there are so many vacation rentals in one part of town that nobody knows each other, that somehow the neighborhood is gone because it's new people coming all the time, and there's not really any kids on the street because it's mostly adults who are staying in those places. So I would hate to see neighborhoods become less, not friendly, but if you don't know the bulk of the people on your street, it's maybe not quite so reassuring. Anyway, there's lots to think about on this, and I really thank you for capturing just about everything that concerns
Yes.
people.
I was really happy to see everything that you put into it. The report is excellent. You just obviously spent a lot of time putting it together. Do you have any idea? I know the recommendation is going to be putting it forward to all the committees. Do we have any idea of when it would come back to council?
We're hoping to bring it back once it's been to all committees in April. So I
Okay.
think they're all meeting in April. And then it's just, so possibly, ideally, the first one in May would be ideal. So I believe, I don't know when the Economic Development Committee, Steering Committee meets, but I think Kaelin said April, so.
That's good, because that's what I was asked, is when it would be coming back. So would somebody like to make the motion?
Sure. I'll move that council refer the report to the Advisory Planning Commission, Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee, and Economic Development Steering Committee for comment.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the 2022 COVID-19 Restart Grant in Aid Program report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Council. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge as well, we've noticed an uptick in Airbnb or vacation rental applications. And so this process itself is having an effect of bringing groups into compliance.
I know we've moved on. Can I ask a question still on that?
Yeah?
How often do you get prospective home buyers asking about whether or not their property is eligible for Airbnb? That's probably
I wouldn't say
more.
frequently, but it's not an uncommon
It's not an
question.
uncommon.
So they're buying a house with a suite, they want to know what their avenues
can
as far
do.
as income generation are.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on now.
Yep. All right. You have in front of you a report outlining our recipients this year for the Restart Grant and Aid program. We received 5 applications this year. And I've also just acknowledging that we are also coming to the end of our restart funding process. As we get into the final of it, I believe we have to have that money spent this year. So this will be, just as a reminder through my report, the last year that this grant program in this model will be presented, as well as a reminder as to exactly our rules that we receive from the provincial government around where restart funding can be spent and how it can be spent. And so that was part of our process when developing the program, to making sure we're steering groups into areas that we know that we can accept and support them financially if we can. This is very much like the community grant and aid program. The one kind of twist that we were able to put onto it because at Restart is that we include the words operational funding. Which for lots of organizations is key. It's probably the hardest thing for them to find. And so this was a good opportunity for those special organizations, if they had projects or services that they were providing for our community, that we could source some of their operation funding directly. And so you've got your 5 applications in front of you. Unlike many reports, I won't have a lot of recommendations in here if you have questions specifically on these applicants and on what they're proposing. Grant applications are not always the easiest to read. I would say that all 5 groups were very, very articulate in expressing their need. And sometimes it may have been a bit more difficult to identify exactly what the program was that they're presenting. But I'm happy here to answer any questions to help kind of steer through those conversations as well. Some of them, like the ones off the top, the CCSS Food Share Program, we all know very well, intimately well. We know how important that is to our community. There's nothing new there. I will add, knowing that my family being involved, my wife is a board member, they've had a hard time this year getting funding from both the food bank and the lottery corp and stuff. So the farmers market is on there again. Again, the food share coupon program. The Cumberland Business Association, which has essentially divided their ask into 2 separate projects. And I threw you a bit of a curveball in the report. You can see that I've made a recommendation as to where one of those projects could fit outside of this, where we already have funding, which means that it's one less thing to include within the current funding for the Restart program, if you so choose. A couple of new applications, the Comox Valley Health Network, which we know quite well. The Comox Bay Care Society, which we know is the caravan who you quite often see in our community around town. And that's it. That's the 5 there. Like the community grant and program, we've provided a table outlining their maximum and minimum requests. We've kind of given you, again, that 70% adjustment because it's something that's done consistently over the years to give you an idea how that math can be done to fit it in. Maybe one thing I'll start with, the Cumberland Business Association, if you choose to fund the mapping, last year through Restart Funding, Council set aside some money to do some wayfinding, increase signage in our community, and we have enough funding remaining in that account to partner with the CBA on this map project. And so we can fund that, should Council choose to, through Restart Funding in of a different envelope, so to speak. And so it doesn't need to be included with the Restart Grant and Aid program, should Council decide to make that decision.
And the total is $40,000?
The total in the Grant and Aid program right now is $40,000. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. So who would like to go first?
Just reminded
we have
me
a volunteer.
about the wayfinding. Originally, this is a few years ago, we were going to get some kind of map to go in the Peace Park that was going to show all the underground galleries. Do you remember that, Leslie? I
No, I
can't do
don't.
that. It was from one of the branches of the BC government.
Mm.
And we were going to put it there so that people could see, I don't know what happened to the idea, could see what was happening, well, not happening, nothing's happening down there, hopefully. But it was an
Something's gotta
exciting
be happening down
concept.
No, I honestly don't remember that one.
Oh, okay, well, maybe when we investigate for geothermal,
Yes.
find it.
That's a
Okay.
good idea, actually. Councillor Brown?
I just have a question first about the wayfinding. So I'm leery of allocating funding from that project without knowing what that project, the full scope and what's been used and for what and what's left.
All good questions. wayfinding we set aside last year, back when we started to do some projects without actually having a clear project in mind. We knew wayfinding, one of the ways that we could help people get around our community better was to increase the amount of signage for things. You know, we even have the small, narrow ones for the historic areas at the different street corners that point us. We do have more in the ability to create more that I'll be working with Rob on. Signage for our parking lots, so we can start to spread some of our visitors around a bit more efficiently. And so we just didn't get to those types of works because we didn't have that specific project plan. I think this fits really well in it. The mapping project, essentially it's, we're very familiar with the Business Association, the maps that they created the last couple of years that they hand out in businesses. The idea to have something like that, but to have it out on Cumberland Road as you approach into town, a bit more of a curb appeal, welcome to the town. Here's where our downtown business district is. Here's where our trailheads are. Here's where our parking lots are. Here's a picture of our forest. You know, and that's something I think that could provide the community a lot of benefit. It's a great opportunity for us to partner with the CBA on a project like that, incorporate their needs, incorporate our community needs. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So moving along, we have a decision to make, so let's start it. Councillor Brown.
I'm ready. So I just wanted to start by saying I think this program is an opportunity to directly address the gentrification and increase expense of living in the village. These are all grants that are going to support our most vulnerable members of our community, with the exception of the Business Association, which is going to support our business community, which has been battered over the last 2 years. So hoping we can add, as we've talked about before, adding more money to this fund, because we started with $40,000, but we also talked about at the time that it would be easy to add more funding to this project, or to this grant program, should it be oversubscribed, which it clearly is. And then just a couple of comments on the CCSS grant. I understand that application was for 10 to 20,000 per year for 4 years. So the ask is actually more like, what's the quick math, $40,000 to $80,000. And that is basically providing food for 56 households in our family. I believe the number is 56. It's close to that, and it is climbing. And with the cost of food only increasing in the next while, I think the more we can allocate to that program, the better. As we know, they did not get food bank status, and so they're struggling to fund that. And the other thing I wanted to point out was that all of these organizations that take the time to apply for these grants take the money we give them, which seems like a small amount of $3,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 or $8,000, and they turn it into hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that to me is a very good investment in our community. So I would like to see CCSS get $20,000, and I'd like to see the farmers market get $8,000, and I'd like to see the Business Association get their whatever it is that fits both those things with the $10,000 from the other wayfinding, that everybody get their full amount, because we still have $107,805 in the pool. And like Kaylin said, we're not going to see this money again. And we've spent quite a lot of it on modernizing our operations and improving services via the village. And I think now is our opportunity to spread some of that in the community to the people who need it most.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hetler.
Thanks. Yeah, I really do appreciate the work that these nonprofits are doing. I do worry though that, you know, we got this big allotment from the province and that it won't be coming again. And then, you know, we have these great programs that are probably only increasing in need. I'm not sure how we're gonna fund them in the future. But for today, I support the request from Cumberland Food Share and Farmers Market, the Comox Valley Community Health Network, and Comox Bay Care Society. I do have a little bit of problem with the Thrive grant from the Cumberland Business Association, and it kind of started from the beginning, I guess, of this project when we were asked for the letter of support from the Cumberland Business Association, which of course we all want to give because we want to see them do well and help in their recovery. But we never saw the grant before it went in to Island Coastal Economic Trust, and we weren't, you know, involved in that process at all. And I think if we were, we could have helped put together a better grant. One of the things that is eligible in the Thrive program is third-party project management costs. So that is what they're asking for now from us, are those project management costs. And since they could have got that through the grant, I don't really support giving that to them now. Some of the conversations that I had with Catherine West around the project just didn't give me a lot of comfort as to that we would be working closely together to do this project. One of my concerns was that the mural plan for the sidewalk on one of the corners is where there's going to be complete demolition of a building and likely reconstruction of the sidewalk. And Catherine at that time said, well, it doesn't matter, we already have this contract with the artists, and we'll just watch the sidewalk get demolished after it's been beautifully painted, and it's fine, and we'll redo it. It just didn't seem like a good approach to me, that, you know, we rally around the community, we, you know, are supporting the artists, we have this great project, and then we watch it get ripped up in front of our eyes. And I still don't know if that is the case, because we really haven't had that communication. Is that still the plan, that the artists are going to do that and then have it ripped up and then do it again? And then, you know, increasing costs, because every project that I am hearing about has increased costs. So, you know, what kind of contingencies are built into the original application, I don't know. There's just a lot of questions I have about the project, and I think maybe that it was taken on before the CBA really had its feet underneath them. Like we had already given them $10,000 to support the CBA coming together and figuring out how they're going to govern themselves, and, you know, really moving forward with having a business district. I had discussions with the former chair about different governance models, how to chair, how to take minutes, all those things, and that's great. It is really difficult for people who are running full-time businesses to come together and do an association and have to form their own board and have all those things, governance models and such, and I commend them for doing that. But I just think that maybe they put the cart before the horse a little bit with the Thrive Grant project, and didn't use us as much as a resource as they could have. So I don't support the 9,840. I do support the 10,160 for the business mapping project. but just not the Thrive Grant portion, because I really feel like that could have and still can. I think they can probably go back to IST and do a scope change and get the money that they need for project management. So, yeah, thanks.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. The CCSS, definitely. I share many of the same concerns as Councillor Kettler. Moving forward, we keep providing more funding, and the funding is going to run out. So, but for this year, I'm very happy to throw my support in the direction, as well with all the other asks. I feel the exact same way, unfortunately, about the Thrive Grant project. Yeah, we've really supported the CBA wholeheartedly since the beginning of its inception, and tried to provide support. There is an end to that, I feel, for this council. I'd like to see them, getting on their feet, and which is what we tried to help them to do. But at some point, they're going to have to become their own society and work towards something like that. I agree that they need a scope change. I'm not interested in supporting the project manager ask. Hopefully they can go to Thrive or to ICE-T and manage the scope change. It's a little unfortunate that this is our first accepted grant from ICE-T, and there's a little bit of some sort of mismanagement about the project and its intention and such. As moving forward with it doesn't make sense really. It just puts risk for the village. I mean, we haven't really approved any of the projects. In 8 years that I've been at this table, we've never supported anything we haven't seen. And after seeing it, I didn't necessarily support a good portion of it, and especially with the destruction of the building coming up, it just needs to change. So I'm hoping that they can take that back to ICE-T and find some way to change the scope so that we can move forward and get the art. I mean, it's super important to revitalize the downtown, but it has to incorporate the council and our staff and our community in a more wholesome way, I think, than this has. And so I won't be supporting that. Again, I really like the 70% aspect for equality, but without the Thrive amount, I would support equaling that out towards all the rest of the four at 70% as well.
Okay.
Or to their maximum of their ask, and then
Yeah.
basically put it all to the CCSS, the extra.
Okay. Councillor Sproul?
Really good report. Once again, it lays it all out what the ask is. I'm totally supportive of the Community School Society, the Farmers Market Association, and the Cumberland Food Share is two of these organizations, as far as I can see, that are involved together. The other one, we've looked at the Farmers Market, the Bay, Comox Bay Care Society Caravan, which does come up here on a fairly regular basis. I don't know much about the Thrive program and the downtown merchants, but it does seem a pity if there is other funding that could be accessed to use some of this money to complete their plans and their workers. So I'm not so sure that I'm supporting that.
Okay. I fully support the Community School Society, the Comox Valley Farmers Market, the Comox Valley Community Health Network, and Comox Bay Care Society. I would like to support them to their full amount. The one with the Cumberland Community School Society, they did put in for a long-term funding, but this is not what the COVID-19 Restart Program is. It won't be here next year. We'll have spent the money, so we couldn't commit to that. They would have to apply under a different umbrella of our budget. And we would welcome that, but not through COVID. Okay. I too have concerns about the Cumberland Business Association, and if you read the guidelines for the grant, we're really stretching it to provide funding to them. And we have to, when we write our report, we have to state what the money was spent on. And if for some reason they deny us, then we have to make up that money as a village. So I don't really want to go outside the permitted criteria for the grant. And I agree that I know they announced at the ICE-T meeting that there is more funding available under that program. And I think it's appropriate that they go to that funder and revisit it and see if they can use that money. Yes?
Your Worship, so just speaking with the Economic Development Officer there, one option that is available just prior to it is that if all the programs were funded fully, less the Thrive grant, there isn't utilizing that money that was part of the previously allocated signage project that would only end up being $41,000 of existing, so everything could be fully funded without the Thrive grant.
Yeah.
So just wanted to
Yeah, I got
ensure
it
that's-
$41,336. My math is correct?
And if I may, I haven't spoken with Clayton with this. When they submitted and they started writing the grant application to Thrive, I strongly recommended they put in words around finding flexibility, not knowing construction timelines. So I think within their grant, they've recognized that there's things that they need to work around with. With council's direction and support as staff, I'm very helpful. I'm very willing to help them with that conversation with ICE-T. If the village is interested in supporting them, asking for an extension, and if we want to help them, one of the arguments is it'll give us a better chance to partner with them and understand this project better. Council and staff, we've provided our support for the project. We haven't provided approval yet. And that really does have to take place. And another risk that involves with you guys funding a project manager is we still have to make permitting and approval decisions. So, but I am happy to, if council wishes, to support them in those conversations with ICE-T to see if we can't get a deferral, construction schedules and so forth. So.
Okay. Councillor Brown, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just so the Thrive grant, the project management component is $6,600, and then there's a bunch of marketing and other things in there that amount to $2,980. So we could also do that. Take out because I think they can actually allocate the money that they have already received to staff time or whatever it's called in the grant. So whether or not they have to go back to ICE-T, I don't think they need to go back to ICE-T. I'm not positive about that, but there's other things incorporated in that $9,840. I also am concerned about the building coming down in the middle of this project. Not knowing that timeline is unfortunate, and I think they could maybe even go ahead with the one side of the street and leave the other. I don't know if there's some way to break it up and do it in pieces. Because I think it is, well, I haven't fully seen it, so I don't know. I'll stop there.
Yes, Clayton?
So for council, in the report, there's page 134. We do outline, and one of the reasons why staff was recommending that this component of the request not be supported was there is about the third of the way down is a list of the recommended COVID restart funding acceptable uses, and I think what the real challenge has been is that this particular project really is a stretch to fit there. So these are the recommendations. Certainly, there is flexibility within it, but in this particular case, this one is quite outside of it, and it hasn't been something that we, from staff's perspective and review, have been able to align that with the accepted scope of different type of projects. So.
Yeah. Well, I really like the idea, Kaylin. Thank you very much for putting that forward about working with the BA. I think that we need to be in line with what's going on and be aware of what's going on and so I thank you very much for putting that forward. I totally agree with that route, and let's move forward on this. So does somebody want to make the motion?
Yeah, I will move that council allocate 10,000. Okay, so, sorry, wait.
It would be,
Starting at number 1, sorry. Somebody else. Maybe I wasn't ready. The council allocate 2022 COVID-19 restart grant. First of all, wait, can we make the 41,336? Is that? Okay. That council allocate 2022 COVID-19 restart funding grant and aid program funding to Cumberland Community School Society for 20,000, Comox Valley Farmers Market Association for 8,000, Comox Valley Community Health Network for 10,000, and Comox Bay Care Society for $3,336. Further, that's move the council allocate 10,160 from the wayfinding signage restart COVID funding in support of and partnership with the Cumberland Business Association Community Map Project.
and that,
And that staff assist in scope change or liaisoning with ICE-T with the CBA.
okay?
Second.
Okay. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. That wasn't bad. We got through it. Next, that council receive the election procedures bylaw review.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Council. With the general election coming up this October, and our election procedure bylaw hasn't been looked at by Council since 2014, I thought it was a good time to bring forward a report to you just to look at some options for election procedures. I'll note, too, that any changes to the bylaw would have to be adopted by July 4th of this year. One of the primary opportunities I thought Council might want to look at is a chance to establish mail ballot voting, and that's permitted by the Local Government Act. Basically, it's open to anyone who wanted to use mail ballot voting, and I think with COVID pandemic recently, there may be some people, you know, the future is really uncertain right now with public health, and it may be a good idea to have that opportunity available for people come October. So it does require a bylaw amendment, and it also allows people that may be bedridden or in palliative care at home to vote. It's I've used it before quite some time ago, and it was restricted at that time to people who were ill to use it, but it's a great opportunity to see those people use mail ballot voting. So, and it's opened up now, so anyone can use it. It's not restricted anymore. So,
So we didn't have mail
No.
ability before?
No.
Like not, oh, I thought we had absentee voting capabilities before.
no, we haven't.
That's funny. I just talked about that this morning randomly with someone and told them not that, just the opposite.
Well, hopefully it
That's
changes
okay.
right now.
You didn't know I was a counselor? Well,
Yeah.
if you're away, you can vote by mail.
No, it's
Okay.
time.
What do I know? Jeez, well, okay, that's good to know.
You did budget for it this year. We
Yeah,
put a
okay.
small budget just
Perfect.
because it does take additional
Knew that.
resources. So maybe that's what you're thinking in the back of
That's
your head.
totally
Yeah,
what I
it
was
is-
thinking.
it-
Thank you, Rachel,
It is
for
pretty
that.
admin
I
heavy.
Yeah,
'cause
you
have to-
got me there. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you. Yeah. That's all.
And one thing I also wanted to bring forward to consider is the special voting opportunity at the Cumberland Lodge that's been a tradition for quite some time. It's a great system. I know the Lodge really appreciates us going up there to offer that opportunity, but both methods do take a fair amount of administrative staff resources. It would be possible to do both, but there would be costs and time to do both. And I think I haven't had a chance to talk to the staff up there yet, but I think we could work with them to do our best to accommodate registration and bringing up ballots. We could actually deliver the ballots up there and help the staff and families volunteer fill out those ballots and return them to us ahead of time. So we could accommodate. The only difference really would be that the voters would be, instead of putting them into a sealed ballot box, they'd put them into a sealed envelope. But
That's legal?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's how mail
Yeah, right,
balloting works.
obviously.
You have an
Right, we
envelope.
just
It's
talked
an
about that.
envelope system. Yeah.
Oh, that's the mail, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I still new on this one.
One thing to note, that mail ballot voting is really time restrictive. There's a very short window to do it. So if people think they can go overseas on a holiday and do a mail ballot, it's not an option. There's about 14 days where we have to mail out the ballot and have it
It has to be
returned to us.
postmarked and then received within a certain time?
It has to be received by the end of voting on the Saturday voting day. So, and by the time the candidate period ends and we get the ballots ready, it's very short timeline. So some people could use a courier if they're away and didn't trust Canada Post, because Canada Post seems to be taking longer and longer in some areas. So that's always an option as well for people if they're really inclined to vote. So,
But with Cumberland Lodge, we would physically bring those ballots up to them.
I think we'd look at doing whatever we could to do that, and identify people who wanted to vote ahead of time and work
Right.
with lodge staff to do that.
That's a nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
I like that
Yeah.
too, yeah.
If I get a chance to talk to them before we bring a bylaw back, I definitely will explore that with them. But I think they're really busy right now, I'm guessing, with all the restrictions there and the health issues. So a couple other things I wanted to note was just how we do voter registration. We do voter day registration. We don't have a voters list. Just make sure that council was aware of that. It seems to work well in Cumberland. I think the majority of municipalities are probably using the provincial voters list now. I don't have stats on that, but I know a lot of municipalities do use the voter day only, so you do have to bring ID with you. Most people bring ID anyways. It's very rare that people don't have ID. And it does take a minute just to do that registration at the voting desk at the same time you get your ballot. Another discussion with, if council wants to look at the option of not having the special voting day at the lodge, is shifting the second advance voting opportunity. Currently, Cumberland has done the first advance voting opportunity on the Wednesday, which is 10 days before the general election, and then having a Saturday advance voting, which is, 4 days later. So they're quite close together. And then the vote at the lodge would be the following Wednesday. And that Wednesday is where many municipalities have their second advance voting day, which is the full day voting. So I did check today with Courtney and Comox and the CBRD, and they do both have their advance votings on the 2 Wednesdays. So we've been successful having the Saturday voting, and people are off work, they can come and vote that day, but it does leave a bit of a gap before the main voting day. If people unexpectedly are going to be away, we do have the odd person come in unhappy that there's no other advance voting closer to voting day. So there is that option to move the second advance voter day from the Saturday closer towards the general election day on the Wednesday.
We always chose it on the weekends because there was so many people that worked away, and they had the time on the weekend to do that, and that's why we always chose the weekend votings.
But now they could do mail-in.
Yeah.
Right? They could. Yeah.
Staff's preference is to split it up or to further it more.
Most municipalities do it Wednesday and Wednesday.
We are different and special, though.
We are, but it also would limit confusion on what we're in the voting between, if everybody else is doing advance voting on those days and we're doing different days. We want to stand apart from the crowd, but we don't want to complicate things so unduly.
Well, we've always stood out differently.
Sorry, so did you say that makes it easier or to spread it or more difficult? I also want the easiest thing for staff too. Or not easiest, but best thing, I don't know.
I don't think this one's about staff. I think it's about
People.
success of people coming to vote, and both have advantages and disadvantages. So it's
We could try it different this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it would limit confusion if you see advertisement in the paper for advanced voting days and you're not cluing into the different jurisdictions or whatever. It'd be nice to have them together.
Yeah, and if people come and want the Saturday, we could offer them the mail ballot. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Sure.
whichever is fine with me,
Okay.
as long as people vote.
Yes. Yeah, and we've been really successful with advanced voting days so far. The
I love
numbers
advanced
are
voting.
really high. More and more people are using advanced voting.
No one's
which is
there.
great.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculously good. Takes 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, so
So I'll move that council direct staff to bring forward amendments to the election procedures bylaw 2014 to allow mail ballot voting and eliminate the special voting opportunity. Do you need the shift? No, okay. And then if council wants to change it to the advance voting
On the Wednesdays.
to Wednesday. Okay, and that staff moves the second advanced voting day to the Wednesday prior to the election.
seconder,
Second.
all in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the temporary road closure report.
Move receipt. Second.
All in favor? Carried. You're filling in for Rob?
Yeah, I am today. Yes, thank you. So hopefully the report in front of council here is fairly straightforward. Basically what between our operations department and the fire service, we've been continuing to have ongoing challenges with these two roadways, and the one benefit is the one challenge is that they're away from more of the population where there's homes or businesses. There's really not a lot of development around that, which has been a challenge. But the one benefit, that's probably created less people watching and observing what's going on. So we've been dealing with a lot of issues. So the recommendation before council is to temporarily close these two roadways, and certainly there's a lot of opportunities in the future to review where what this might look like. But right now, for both for response and costs associated with it, it's recommended that we would close these at this time. And as development occurs over there, we'll address what that might look like in the future. But right now, that is what staff is requesting council to consider.
Okay, any questions?
Well, I mean, it just seems like Minto Road was built for that purpose. Like, what's going on there? So it makes too much sense to close these roads down. Yeah, I don't know, every time you drive by, you have to look back to even see it, and usually something's going on there. People are living there, there's burnouts. I don't know, it seems like they built that for burnouts, so, yeah.
And the people in the area, even though they're quite a distance away, they hear what's going on there. And it will be nice that that's not going to happen.
Yep.
Can you describe what the actual physical barrier would look like?
I think what is defined in the plan here that our engineering department has had is there would be some lock blocks. So on each of the sites there would be enough lock blocks. So those are the concrete blocks that would be placed in a way that if there was a need for someone to walk through that, that's fine. But they would it's not a full wall that would go right across, but it'd be enough to restrict most vehicles that would be going in there. And then there'd be some signage as well to say that this road is closed. But they would be the 2-foot high concrete lock block type of barriers that would be put in there. Certainly something at this point in time, we had a conversation about this, and I think if it is over a longer term, we would look to something a little more permanent, such as a gate system or some other means of closing it. But this being temporary in nature, this would allow us to also move it very easily. If say the fire department needed to get in there, they could easily move it quickly and get access. So yeah.
Right.
So the fire department has given their input on it, and
Correct. Yeah. This has come from both the
from them, yeah.
operations and the fire department due to and bylaw as well. So all departments have had a conversation about the challenges there. So yeah.
Once you've seen one burning van there, it's going to be more.
Yeah, they've been using it for a while. Okay, so the motion,
I'll move the council direct staff to proceed with the temporary road closures as shown on the attached plans for both Memorial Way and Grand Road.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. There's no new business. Notice motions and announcements. The Heritage Committee, Monday, April the 4th at 5 p.m. will be holding their meeting. And the Advisory Planning Commission, Thursday, April the 14th at 4 p.m. will be their meeting. And it's open to the public. They can come and watch if they like. Next, we have question period. Please send questions by email to info@cumberland.ca and use subject line question period, and we'll wait for questions.
I think Karen said there would be a homelessness and affordable housing committee meeting in April as well, but it's not listed. I don't think that it's been.
Said when the date
Yeah,
is, but
yeah.
there will be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and accessibility too.
Okay.
They'll be happy. Yeah.
It's still light out. It's amazing.
It's spring. It's official.
But it's after 8, or no, it's 20 to 8.
It's still
20 to 8.
late.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute, are we still going to longer days?
Right.
When does it change?
June.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So we're still heading on
We're
the.
still getting longer, yeah,
Okay.
by leaps and bounds.
Closed portion. Would somebody like to read?
All right, I'll do it. The council closed the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 90 of the Community Charter to consider A, personal information about unidentifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or other position appointed by the municipality, labor relations or other employee relations. The acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure would reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under Section 98 Annual Municipal Report.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Carried.